Hey everybody, my name is Cameron Jones. I'm a guitar teacher with a degree in composition, and in this video I'm going to explain why the guitar solo from the song Reptilia by The Strokes is a brilliant piece of musical composition. Now, most people don't associate The Strokes with great guitar solos, but that's because most people's definition of great has more to do with flashy technique than it does with composition. The solo on Reptilia, which is played by Nick Valenci, is great not because it's fast and technically difficult, though it is both of those things, and not even because it's particularly lyrical or emotive. It's great because it is expertly crafted and composed. The melodic and rhythmic phrasing are so perfectly balanced it would be right at home being analyzed next to Mozart or Chopin in a college classroom. Let me explain. Before we jump into the analysis, we need to define a couple terms. The first of those terms is phrasing. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the concept of a phrase when it comes to language, right? A phrase is a kind of standalone grouping of words that embodies a thought or a concept or maybe a description of something. Well, a musical phrase is very similar, but instead of being a grouping of words, it's a grouping of notes delineated by pitch and or rhythm. Consider this rhythm. That's an example of very clear rhythmic phrasing. We can hear where one phrase ends and the next one begins. Start, end, start, end. Now consider this melody. That is an example of melodic phrasing. Even though the rhythm is steady, we can hear where the notes or pitches repeat, which marks the beginning of another phrase. Start, start, start. Some phrases will have melodic phrasing but no rhythmic phrasing. Some, but fewer, will have rhythmic phrasing but no melodic phrasing, and the majority will have both. Identifying the phrases in a piece of music is one of the most important things we can do if we're interested in understanding that music. Once we do that, we can start to see the music's structure, and that allows us to go even deeper by examining how the notes within each phrase interact with each other, and how the phrases themselves interact with the other phrases. The second term we need to define is form. Form is the organization of chunks of music into bigger chunks of music. Let's say you have three different phrases. We'll call them phrase A, phrase B, and phrase C, and you want to combine those phrases in some way to make a larger section of music. The order that you put those phrases in would be your form. So you might have a phrasing scheme of ABAC or ABCB. Any order that you put those phrases in represents the form of your section of music. But form doesn't stop at combining phrases. You can also combine larger sections of music. Let's say you decide to organize your phrases into the ABAC form, and you call that your A section. Then let's say you come up with a totally different set of phrases. This time your phrasing scheme is ABCA, and you call that your B section. Now, just to be extra clear, phrase A from the A section is different from phrase A from the B section. Each section operates as a different world with different phrases, even though the naming scheme is the same. Next, you combine your A and B sections into some kind of form. Let's say ABAB, and you call that a verse. And then you go through that whole process again with totally new material and come up with a totally new chunk of music, which you call a chorus. Now you have a verse and a chorus. And guess what we can do with verses and choruses? That's right, we can build songs. So for your song, let's say you go with verse, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, chorus. That would be the form for your song. Now let's say you write 8 other songs and you want to make an album. Again, the order you decide to put those songs in for your album is the form of the album. So phrasing and form are really the two main organizational aspects of music composition, which is why those are the two things we're going to focus on as we analyze this solo. The overall form of the solo is A, B, A prime. And the whole thing is played over a simple repeating 2-chord progression, 2 measures of B minor, followed by 2 measures of E major. The A section consists of the first 8 measures of the solo. The B section consists of the following 4 measures, so measures 9 through 12, and A prime consists of the last 4 measures. The term prime means that it's basically a different version of a previous section. So A prime in this solo is really just a slightly reworked version of the A section. And just by outlining our form, A, B, A prime, we can already start to get a glimpse into the logic of the solo. We have our first section, then we move to a different section that's half as long, then we come back to an altered and shortened version of the first section. Now, even having such a clear, easily outlinable form is kind of unusual for a guitar solo. Most solos are closer to a kind of stream of consciousness feel where it's just one long build to a climax without much orderly repetition of material. So already, this is looking different from the typical guitar solo. All right, now let's go a little deeper and dig into the phrasing of each section. Rhythmically, the A section is very repetitive. Da 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 da, just over and over again. Because there aren't any breaks in that rhythm, it doesn't really give us any clues as to where one phrase ends and the next one begins. In other words, there's no real rhythmic phrasing going on here. But to my eyes, it sure does look like we have some repeating melodic patterns going on. Notice how every other measure is exactly the same. That signals that we're looking at the beginning of a new phrase every 2 measures. So we have 4 2-measure phrases. And the only differences between the phrases are these measures, the second half of each phrase. So no rhythmic phrasing, but very clear melodic phrasing. It's almost like he has to be extra clear and obvious with the melodic phrasing to make up for the lack of rhythmic phrasing. So it appears that we have 4 phrases here, right? Not exactly. If we look closely, we can see that the first phrase and the third phrase are exactly the same. So we actually only have 3 distinct phrases. Our first phrase is A, our second phrase is B, our third phrase is also A because it's the same as the first one, and our fourth phrase is C. So the phrase structure of section A is A, B, A, C. And this is a really common form. You can think of it like a conversation. There's a question, then an answer, then the question's repeated, and then a more definitive answer. What should I get at the store? Maybe you should get peas. What should I get at the store? You should definitely get peas. That's actually pretty catchy. Maybe I should write that down. For you music nerds, we're in B Dorian here, and the last note of phrase A is F sharp, which is scale degree 5. Translated into English, that just means our phrase ends on a pretty unresolved note, which leads us into the next phrase. Listen to how it sounds if I play just the first phrase and then stop. It sounds unfinished, right? That unresolved note at the end of the phrase is kind of like putting the word "and" at the end of a sentence. The other day I climbed Mount Everest and what, right? The word "and" implies a follow-up sentence. Phrase B, on the other hand, ends on scale degree 1, which is a very resolved sounding note. If I play just this phrase, that sounds more like a finished statement, doesn't it? I also climbed Mount Everest the other day. Then, of course, we repeat phrase A, so we get that unresolved feeling again. And then phrase C ends on scale degree 1, just like phrase B does, but with a slightly different rhythm. Instead of da 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 da, like the other 2 phrases, phrase C's rhythm is da 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 da. It ends 2 notes earlier than the other phrases. And that's really important because that means we arrive at that last resolved sounding note sooner than we do in phrase B, and we hold it for longer. Both of these things give phrase C a stronger sense of finality than phrase B, even though both phrases end on scale degree 1. As you can see, even within section A, we have this whole structure with a beginning, middle, and end. And what's even cooler is that he manages to do that by making the most minute changes from one phrase to the next. In the B section, we have a complete change up, both rhythmically and melodically. In terms of rhythm, first of all, just the length of the section is different, right? The A section lasted for 8 measures, the B section lasts for 4 measures. We also have very clear rhythmic phrasing in this section. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 start, da, 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 end, start, da, 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 end. We can see that our phrases are 1 measure long instead of 2, and that they start on the and of the 4 count rather than on the 1 count like in the A section. This technique of starting a phrase right before the beginning of a measure is sometimes referred to as a push, because it gives a feeling of kind of hurrying to the next measure, like you're pushing to get there sooner. Da, 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 da. The 1 measure phrases combined with that push add a sense of urgency or higher energy to this section in contrast to the more kind of matter-of-fact feel of the A section. It's like in the A section, he's calmly stating his points, and in the B section, he's more desperate for you to hear him, so he's starting the phrases earlier and getting them out quicker. And finally, it's just a faster, busier riff. There are more notes per measure than in the A section. As far as the melody goes, probably the biggest contrast with the A section is that we're changing registers. We're using much higher notes, which adds to that sense of urgency. If I'm talking to you like this, and then all of a sudden my voice jumps up here, that gets your attention, right? Because that's something people do when they get excited or agitated. The higher pitch communicates a higher level of emotion. Not only do we have a jump in register, but the notes in this section continue to get higher as we move from phrase to phrase. So there's that initial jump in intensity coming from the A section, and then the intensity continues to build as we move through the B section. There are also new techniques like bends and pull-offs introduced here. Now, I keep making language analogies because I think a lot of what conveys emotion in spoken language, pitch, volume, speed, etc., is also used, consciously or not, to evoke the same emotions in music. Techniques like bends and pull-offs bring us closer to the expressiveness of the human voice, and the closer we get to that, the more emotional resonance the music will have. Now let's look at how the phrases interact with each other. Each phrase in this section is slightly different. The first and second phrases are almost the same except for the first couple notes. The third phrase takes the rhythm and melodic shape of the first two and develops it a little by shifting all the notes up. And the fourth phrase, while starting out the same as the third phrase, breaks the rhythmic pattern that the first three phrases have established and ends with a completely different rhythmic and melodic gesture. So the phrase structure here is A, B, C, D. Now notice that, unlike in section A, where the first and third phrases were the same, in section B, the first and second phrases are very similar, and the third and fourth phrases are similar. So in section A, you have this kind of back and forth feel from phrase to phrase, whereas in section B, it's more like the first half of the section is one thing, and the second half is another thing. So in a way, section A and section B are pretty different in terms of the flow from phrase to phrase. But if we take a look at the phrase length, we actually find quite a bit of similarity. In the A section, each phrase is 2 measures long, and each phrase contrasts with the following phrase. So you're kind of changing directions every 2 measures. In the B section, each phrase lasts for 1 measure, but you have the first 2 phrases contrasting with the next 2 phrases. So again, you're changing directions every 2 measures. The reason for those consistent 2-measure groupings is the chord progression the solo is played over. Remember, at the beginning of the lesson, I said that each chord lasts for 2 measures. And that's why, regardless of phrase length, we see these 2-measure groupings in both the A section and the B section. Another similarity between the 2 sections is that the fourth and final phrase in both sections has a sense of finality. In section A, that was signaled by the early ending of that phrase and the fact that the last note was scale degree 1. In section B, that sense of finality comes from the break in the rhythmic pattern and the new melodic shape of phrase D. And that brings us to A prime. As previously stated, this is basically a revised version of our A section. The most obvious difference between the two is length, right? A is 8 measures, A prime is 4 measures. That means since our phrases in this section are 2 measures long, just like the A section, we only have 2 phrases here instead of 4. The first phrase is just our normal phrase A, exactly the same as in the A section. Our second phrase though, which is the very last phrase in the solo, is new. So we're going to call it phrase D. Our new phrase D is kind of like a more extreme version of phrase C from the A section. Let's listen to them both and then I'll explain what I mean. The only difference between the two is that phrase D arrives at that last note a couple beats earlier, right? If you remember, the aspects that gave phrase C a sense of finality were that it ended on scale degree 1, which is a very resolved sounding note, and it arrived at that ending note sooner and therefore held it longer than the last note in any of the other phrases in section A. Well, since in phrase D we arrive at that last note even sooner than we did in phrase C, it has an even stronger sense of finality, which is why I say it's a more extreme version of phrase C. And that strong sense of finality is exactly what we want in the last phrase of a composition. Because it's the final phrase, it should sound more final than any of the other phrases so that everything is nice and resolved and we can move on to the next section of the song. Now that we've examined the entire solo phrase by phrase, our final step is to kind of zoom out and look at the big picture to see how everything fits together. We start with the A section, which contains a very repetitive 3-note rhythmic theme. Da 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 da, and whose phrasing therefore is completely dictated by pitch rather than rhythm. It's made up of 3 2-measure phrases with an A-B-A-C phrase pattern, and the overall feel in this section is what I would call matter of fact or straightforward. There's not a whole lot of emotional intensity going on. It's just kind of calmly starting this dialogue with that conversational phrase pattern. Then we move to the B section, which is made up of 4 1-measure phrases. Everything about this section is higher energy than the A section. The push at the beginning of each phrase, the shorter phrases, the faster and higher notes that continue to climb from phrase to phrase. So we kind of shift into a higher gear for this section, which not only provides a great contrast to the first section, but it also moves the story of the solo along by building drama, which keeps us engaged and wanting to hear where this thing goes. And then finally we have the downshift back to A prime, which wraps everything up by returning to the same raw material as we heard in the first section. So we get this really nice cohesion between the beginning and the end of the solo, but altering that material just enough to give it the extra sense of finality that we want at the end of a composition. So there you have it, an expertly crafted piece of music by Nick Valenci and the Strokes. Hopefully, if you were skeptical at the beginning of this video, I've done something to move the needle for you. If I've inspired you to learn how to play the solo, you can get the tab through the link in the description. If you're not convinced, that's fine too. Let me know why in the comments. Either way, keep being curious, and I'll see you in the next one.